Prelude, the Tavern Keeper's Week. Congratulations, you are now the proud owner of a tavern in ancient Athens. Well, proud may not be the right word. Nobody feels proud of a floor sticky with spilled wine, benches carved with the graffiti of 100 bored drunks, and an air so heavy with smoke and sweat it could be bottled and sold as essence of despair. But it's yours, your tavern, your problem, your week. This is no grand symposium hall where philosophers wine and dine with silver cups. This is no aristocrat's villa with marble floors and perfumed guests. This is a place where sandals drag in mud, goats sneak through the back door, and customers argue whether they'll pay now, later, or never. It is survival with amphorae. And you, tavern keeper, reluctant entrepreneur, master of diluted wine, must live through it, one day at a time. 7 days, each one longer than the last, each one dripping with sweat, sour laughter, and the faint hope that Dionysus might take pity on you. So let us open the door, let the smoke curl, the benches creak, and the amphorae sigh under their lids. The week of wine, sweat, and survival has begun. Monday, the opening act of misery. The rooster hasn't even finished crowing when you drag yourself out of bed. Your wife snores, the children kick each other over the least lumpy straw, and you shuffle into sandals that feel like damp wood. Outside, Athens is still yawning awake, but you are already doomed to begin your shift in the empire of splinters and sour wine. First duty, the amphorae. You pry open the wax seal on the largest jar, and a smell drifts up that is neither comforting nor fatal, somewhere between vinegar and regret. You swirl the liquid with a ladle, skim off the mold, mutter a prayer to Dionysus, and declare it drinkable. Your standards dropped years ago, somewhere between your third late tax payment and the day your cousin stole your only decent stool. You sweep the floor with a broom that has fewer bristles than your neighbor's chin. Dust mixes with yesterday's ashes and a few unidentifiable stains that might be wine, blood, or philosophy. By the time the door creaks open, the tavern is no cleaner, but at least smells less like goat. And then, of course, the philosophers arrive. They drift in like storm clouds, sandals worn thin, robes patched at the elbows, eyes already heavy with questions. They order the cheapest wine, demand extra water to dilute it, and promise to pay later. Always later. You pour anyway, because refusing them means 4 hours of lectures on the immortality of the soul, and you'd rather drown than debate metaphysics before breakfast. They settle in, cups clinking, voices rising. One insists the soul is eternal. Another insists it is as fragile as your benches. You pretend to listen, but your eyes wander to the amphorae, calculating how much of your profit will vanish in their endless debates. You sigh, wipe the counter with the same rag you used yesterday to clean vomit, and resign yourself. Philosophers are like cockroaches. They outlast everything. By mid-morning, 2 farmers stumble in from the fields, smelling of sweat and donkey hair. One demands bread, the other demands credit. You provide the bread, but deny the credit, and immediately the room erupts in a shouting match. The philosophers cheer them on, as though it were an Olympic event. The donkey outside brays an agreement. You rub your temples and serve another round, because if you can't win the argument, you might at least sell drinks to both sides. The tavern grows hot, air thick with smoke from the brazier. Your wife appears, muttering about goats in the garden, then vanishes again before you can complain about your own troubles. The children run through chasing a chicken, which knocks over a cup onto a philosopher's scroll. He leaps up shrieking about ruined wisdom. You hand him a fresh cup of wine and tell him that now his wisdom is marinated. He does not laugh, but the farmers do, and that's enough. By noon, the tavern stinks of olives, sweat, and hopelessness. You stare at your hands, sticky from spilled drink, and wonder when your life began to smell permanently of sour grapes. You could have been a potter. You could have been a soldier. Instead, you are the keeper of a room where benches bleed splinters, customers bleed excuses, and you bleed patience. Still, when the sun goes down, the room is full, the cups are clinking, and the amphorae are draining. Business is misery, yes, but misery with coins, and in Athens, that counts as survival. Tuesday, domestic chaos and drunken soldiers. The second day of your week begins not with wine, but with your wife shouting. Why? Because the neighbor's goats have broken through the fence again. They've eaten half the barley you had set aside for brewing beer. You don't even like beer, but customers demand it, and now you're left with a pile of goat droppings and an angry wife. You mutter a half-hearted curse at the gods, but deep down, you know goats are stronger than prayer. You trudge into the tavern and survey the battlefield of yesterday, cups overturned, benches scarred, the air still clinging to the perfume of sweat and smoke. You sweep with your hopeless broom, more for ritual than cleanliness. The floor remains sticky. You wonder if it will ever not be sticky. Perhaps one day, archaeologists will unearth your tavern and declare, this must have been the temple of glue. The children are already awake, chasing a chicken across the room. The bird flaps, squawks, knocks over a half-empty amphora you foolishly left uncorked. Your wife yells again. The children laugh, and you briefly consider joining the chicken in its escape. You don't. You mop the spill with your rag and call it breakfast. By mid-morning, the first customers stumble in, not philosophers this time, thank every god, but traders from the harbor, smelling of fish and ambition. They drink fast, argue louder, and leave without paying enough. Still, at least, they leave. And then, as the sun climbs, the soldiers arrive, fresh from patrol, armored, loud, and already drunk before they order. You line up amphorae like a general preparing for battle, because once soldiers begin to sing, they demand wine by the jug. They roar songs about heroic campaigns that sound suspiciously like tavern brawls, and you pour as quickly as your weary arms allow. One soldier knocks over an amphora. You stare at the spreading pool as though watching your own funeral procession. 2 weeks of profit soak into the dirt floor, vanishing with the speed of spilled hope. The soldier claps you on the back and promises eternal gratitude. Gratitude does not pay taxes. You grab your rag, yes, the same rag as always, and begin mopping. Efficiency is the only virtue a tavern keeper can afford. The noise swells. One soldier challenges another to a wrestling match. They topple a bench. Another demands food. You throw him bread so stale it could serve as a weapon. He eats it anyway, because wine softens even stone. Outside, the chicken returns, pursued again by your children. It darts through the soldier's legs, nearly tripping one. Laughter explodes. Someone suggests roasting it. Your wife storms in, declaring the bird belongs to the household, and that any man who touches it will be throttled. The soldiers cheer for her. The children squeal. The chicken vanishes yet again. By late afternoon, the tavern smells like sweat, spilled wine, and stale bread. You lean on the counter, eyes half closed, muttering prayers not to Dionysus but to Morpheus, god of sleep. Yet still the soldiers sing, spilling verses and wine with equal enthusiasm. You pour, you mop, you sigh. When the sun finally dips, the soldiers stagger out, promising to return tomorrow. You know they will. You watch the puddles dry into sticky patches, rub your aching shoulders, and whisper to yourself, if this is only Tuesday, I won't live to see Saturday. Still, your pouch is heavier, your benches only half broken, and your wife has not yet abandoned you. In Athens, that is victory. Wednesday, Dionysus takes over. The gods are cruel, and today they prove it. Dionysus has his festival, and while that means more business than your arms can endure, it also means you will remember this day only as a blur of spilled wine, goat masks, and madness echoing off the walls of your tavern. The morning begins deceptively calm. You sweep half-heartedly, muttering about yesterday's soldiers, when the first revelers stumble in before the sun is even high. One wears a wreath of ivy, another already smells like he's been drinking since last week. They demand cups, loud and cheerful, and you realize the day will not be measured in hours, but in amphorae. By mid-morning, the tavern is overflowing. Men in goat masks stomp through the doorway, hooves painted on their sandals. One carries a flute and insists on playing the same 3 notes until your ears buzz. Women arrive in groups, laughing, singing, knocking into benches. Children chase each other, shrieking, weaving between the drunks. The air is a storm of sweat, smoke, and sour grapes. You pour and pour. Nobody notices that you dilute the wine 3 parts to 1. Nobody cares that you reuse cups, wiping them with the same rag you used yesterday on the floor. They shout for more, louder each time, slapping coins on the counter or forgetting coins altogether. You no longer bother counting. You only pour. A man in a goat mask climbs onto a bench, declaring himself Dionysus incarnate. The crowd cheers, and he demands a sacrifice. Before you can argue, someone drags an actual goat into the street outside. Within moments, the animal is slaughtered, its blood spilling across the threshold of your tavern. Customers roar in approval, neighbors scream in horror, and you add cleaning sacrificial stains to your already endless list of duties. The smell mingles with smoke from the brazier. The goat's hide is dragged around the room like a victory banner. A philosopher leaps onto a table to argue that Dionysus symbolizes chaos itself. A soldier throws wine in his face to prove the point. You mop, pour, mop again. Your arms ache, your ears ring, your nose is filled with goat and vinegar. By afternoon, the frenzy peaks. The tavern floor is slick, benches overturned, amphorae rolling like drums. Men and women dance together in circles, stamping until dust rises. Someone knocks down half the wall decorations. Children bang spoons on the counter as if summoning another god. You pour until your shoulders throb, lips muttering automatic blessings. Yes, here, drink, another cup. May the gods pity me. At one point, a man insists on paying not with coins, but with onions. You accept. Later, a woman demands you crown her queen of the tavern. You find an old wreath, plop it on her head, and the crowd cheers. Another man passes out, face first into a basket of figs. You leave him there. It feels symbolic. The donkey from next door somehow wanders inside, perhaps drawn by the smell. The crowd greets it like a divine omen. They drape garlands on its neck and toast to its health. It brays loudly, spraying spit across half the room. The crowd answers with song. You pour another round. By nightfall, your pockets are heavier than ever, coins clinking like a lyre, but your body is wrecked. Your tunic is stained with wine, blood, and gods know what else. Your ears hum with drunken songs. Your arms shake from lifting jugs. The floor looks like a battlefield, littered with broken cups, wilted wreaths, and snoozing drunks. You collapse behind the counter, head in your hands, muttering that no amount of money can be worth this. Then you hear the coins jingle again, heavy as promise. Maybe it is worth it, maybe just once. Outside, the festival still howls. Flutes screech, revelers stagger, goats bleat in the night. Inside, you lie against a bench, too tired to curse, too weary to clean, pockets full of silver, mind full of despair. You fall asleep to the sound of drunken hymns, the tavern breathing like a beast, too wild to tame. Thursday, hangover nation. Morning crawls into Athens like a wounded dog. The festival is over, but the city is not healed. Men groan in alleys, women clutch their heads, children poke fun at unconscious fathers who still wear goat masks from yesterday's madness. And into this battlefield of headaches, you, tavern keeper, open your doors once more. The air inside still reeks of smoke and wine. You try to sweep before dawn, but every sweep of the broom only stirred the stench higher. The floor remains sticky, as though Dionysus himself has decreed it should be eternal. You shrug. Hangovers demand wine, not cleanliness. The first customers stagger in before the amphora have even been properly stirred. Two men collapse onto the same bench, clutching their stomachs, moaning for relief. You know the cure, of course. More wine. Always more wine. You pour thin cups, mostly water, with a whisper of grape, and they drink greedily. Their eyes glaze as though you've given them the nectar of Olympus. They do not notice that you've sold them yesterday's leftovers. By mid-morning, the philosophers return, robes wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. They insist on resuming their debates, though their voices are hoarse and their scrolls still damp from yesterday's spilled wine. One argues that atoms make up everything, including his headache. Another insists the soul is divisible, like bread, and should therefore be shared. You nod, pour them watered wine thinner than a politician's promises, and collect their coins. They sip, sigh, and continue debating as if wisdom itself were trapped between their temples. Soon, a line forms. Farmers, soldiers, market women, even a few children sent by desperate parents clutching small coins. Everyone begs for the same thing, a cure. You serve jug after jug, each one a little weaker, each one accepted with trembling gratitude. Nobody cares that it tastes of vinegar. Nobody cares that the cups still smell faintly of yesterday's goat. They only care that their pounding heads quiet, if only for a moment. By noon, the tavern looks like a field hospital. Men lie across benches, groaning. Women rest their heads on tables, muttering that the gods are cruel. One soldier falls asleep mid-song, his head on his shield. Another vomits quietly into a corner. You mop without flinching. Efficiency, after all, is your only virtue. And then he arrives, the tax collector. He steps into the room like a shadow, clean toga, sharp eyes, a little wooden tablet for notes. He does not drink, he does not laugh, he does not even sneeze in the thick smoke. He simply watches as you pour, counts the coins exchanged, and scribbles. Your chest tightens. When he approaches the counter, the room seems to shrink. He names a number so large you nearly choke. You protest. He raises one eyebrow, just one, and you fall silent. Coins are handed over, heavy as blood in your palm, heavier still when they leave it. The collector notes your payment, turns, and vanishes without a word. The room exhales. You mutter prayers about him tripping into the nearest latrine, but the gods rarely grant such mercies. The afternoon drags on. Every time you think the tavern is empty, another groaning soul stumbles in, clutching his head, begging for just a sip. You serve, you mop, you serve again. The amphorae drain faster than you can refill them. Your wife storms through, shouting that the children have stolen figs again. You wave her away. You have no figs, only hangovers to manage. By evening, you are broke, exhausted, and still wiping vomit from the corner where the soldier has finally stopped moving. The floor is no cleaner, the benches no sturdier, and your soul no lighter. Yet the tavern is quiet at last. You slump behind the counter, head on folded arms, breathing in the sour air of survival. The day has been cruel, but it has passed. That is all a tavern keeper can ask. Tomorrow will bring new disasters. Tonight you allow yourself the faintest smile. In Athens, misery may be eternal, but so too is business. Friday, wedding disaster. The morning begins with a knock on your door, not the usual half-drunk philosopher or the neighbor complaining about goats, but a delegation. 3 men in clean tunics, faces serious, voices solemn. They bow slightly, then announce, "Our family has chosen your tavern for today's wedding feast." You blink at them, certain you are still dreaming. A wedding? Here, in this den of sticky floors, broken benches, and smoke that never leaves. You nearly laugh, but then you hear the sound of coins jingling. Suddenly, the tavern looks less like a ruin and more like a palace. You sweep twice, scrub once, and scatter a few herbs to disguise the smell of last night's vomit. Your wife scolds you for charging too little. Your children steal figs from the preparation table, and the chicken struts proudly across the floor as if auditioning for entertainment. Still, when the first guests arrive, the place almost resembles respectability. Almost. By midday, the tavern is overflowing. The bride's family squeezes onto the left side, the groom's onto the right. At first, the division seems harmless, 2 halves of a single joyous whole. But you, tavern keeper, know better. Families are like amphorae, one crack, and everything spills. The wine flows freely, amphora after amphora is drained, diluted only slightly because you are feeling generous. After all, these are wedding guests, and generous guests tip well. Bread loaves are torn apart, olives devoured. Cheese vanishes like coins in a tax collector's purse. The room rings with laughter, song, and the clatter of benches. For a brief, miraculous hour, the tavern feels almost noble. Then, Uncle Number 1 stands to give a toast. His voice is slurred, his cup already empty. He raises it high and proclaims the groom's family blessed by the gods. Applause erupts. Then, Uncle Number 2, on the bride's side, shouts that the bride's family deserves equal honor. More applause, louder this time. Then both uncles shout at each other. You attempt to distract them with more wine. It works for a few moments, until one uncle throws an olive across the room. It strikes a cousin in the eye. The cousin retaliates with bread. Someone else hurls cheese. Within moments, the tavern is transformed into a battlefield of food. You crouch behind the counter, clutching your rag like a shield, muttering prayers to every god in alphabetical order. The children, delighted, join in. Olives and bread fly like missiles. The chicken flaps onto a table, scattering cups. The donkey, drawn by the chaos, noses through the door and brays as if cheering for more. Your wife screams, trying to restore order, but the guests cheer louder, clapping and stomping until the floor shakes. Then comes the dancing. Someone drags the bride and groom into the center, demanding they dance together. The musicians, two cousins with flutes and a borrowed drum, play furiously. The couple sways, unsteady, while guests form a circle clapping in rhythm. For a moment, joy returns, and even you feel your chest lighten. But joy never lasts in your tavern. The groom stumbles, the bride trips, and both collapse onto a bench that was already cracked. The bench shatters with a mighty crack. Silence falls. Then laughter explodes. Too loud, too wild. The bride's mother shrieks that her daughter deserves better. The groom's father yells back. And just like that, the food fight becomes a fist fight. Benches overturn, cups shatter, amphorae spill, men wrestle in the dust, women scream, children cheer. One soldier relative brandishes a sword until you snatch it away, reminding him this is a tavern, not a battlefield. He punches the wall instead. You sigh, certain the wall will fall before your business does. Through it all, you keep pouring, because coins are coins, whether they're dropped in laughter or hurled in rage. Some guests even pay twice, forgetting they already gave you money. You pocket everything, ignoring the chaos around you. By sunset, the tavern is unrecognizable. The floor is layered in olives, bread crusts, broken pottery, and 3 unconscious cousins. The bride and groom sit side by side, dazed, sipping watered wine as though nothing happened. Families glare, but do not speak. The musicians play one final sour note, then collapse. The guests leave in a slow trickle, muttering about honor and vengeance. You and your wife begin the long task of sweeping bones, bread, and blood from the floor. The chicken roosts smugly on a beam overhead. The donkey refuses to leave, chewing on wreaths. Finally, the room is empty, except for you, your wife, and the coins you collected. More coins than you've seen in months. Your body aches, your head pounds, but your pouch is heavy. You collapse behind the counter, grin at your wife, and say, "If anyone asks, let's tell them the wedding was perfect." She glares, then laughs despite herself, and for once, you both agree, disaster or not, today was profitable. You fall asleep dreaming of weddings, though in your dreams the guests throw coins instead of olives. Saturday, politics and punches. The morning begins with an unusual silence. No philosophers at the door, no farmers begging for bread, no soldiers already half drunk. You almost dare to hope. Perhaps you think the gods will finally grant you a quiet day. You sweep the floor, refill the amphorae, even set out cups that are only slightly chipped. For an hour, the tavern is calm, too calm. Then they arrive, 2 groups of men, each wrapped in clean togas, each carrying the posture of men who believe their words could steer the city itself. Politicians, worse than philosophers, because politicians carry not just arguments, but followers, and followers always carry fists. They sit on opposite sides of the room, glaring across the benches. You approach carefully, offering wine like a peace treaty. For a moment, they sip quietly. You almost believe you can manage them. But then, the speeches begin. One declares that Athens must invest more in ships. The other declares that ships are useless without soldiers. Voices rise, hands slam tables, cups rattle. You pour more wine because pouring is easier than refereeing. The followers cheer their leaders, clapping, stomping, shouting. Soon the tavern trembles, as if an earthquake has chosen to live under your roof. By midday, the debate has turned into shouting. The shouting turns into insults. The insults turn into bread rolls, flung like missiles. You duck behind the counter as the first cup shatters against the wall. The chicken, sensing drama, flutters onto a beam overhead and watches like a smug oracle. Then, the first punch lands. One follower smashes his fist into another's jaw, and the tavern erupts. Benches overturn, tables crash, amphorae spill their guts across the floor. Men grapple, women scream, children cheer from the doorway. You clutch your rag like a sword and shout, "Not the amphorae." No one listens. The donkey wanders in, drawn by the smell of spilled wine. Someone mistakes it for a symbol of one political faction and cheers. Someone else boos. The donkey brays, kicks over a bench, and flees back outside. The fight escalates. You crawl under a table, dragging coins dropped in the chaos into your pouch. A man crashes down beside you, nose bleeding, demanding another cup. You pour it for him, because business is business. He thanks you before staggering back into the fray. The philosophers arrive late, of course. They see the brawl, stroke their beards, and declare that this is democracy in action. One climbs on a table to deliver a lecture about the nature of justice. He is promptly hit with a loaf of bread. He continues lecturing while wiping crumbs from his beard. You admire his dedication, if not his intelligence. By afternoon, soldiers are called to break up the fight, but soldiers never resist free wine. Within minutes, they are drinking, singing, and occasionally punching whichever politician happens to be nearest. The tavern is now a battlefield, where allies and enemies change with every refill of a cup. You pour and pour, praying only that your amphorae hold out. At one point, you use a broken cup as a ladle, filling anything that resembles a container, helmets, shoes, even a hollowed-out loaf of bread. The crowd roars approval. When the dust finally settles, half the benches are broken, the floor is flooded, and at least 3 men are asleep, face first in puddles of wine. One politician declares victory, the other vows revenge. Both throw coins onto the counter in defiance. Their followers, bruised and staggering, leave behind more coins, either from guilt or confusion. You don't care. You scoop them up like a miser. As the sun sets, the tavern is quiet again. Quiet, but ruined. Broken pottery everywhere. Stains you know will never come out. A smell of sweat so thick it might linger until next year. Your wife surveys the mess, shakes her head, and mutters that you married into madness. You do not argue. Instead, you collapse onto a bench, one of the few still standing, pouch heavy with coins, arms heavy with exhaustion. You raise a cup to no one in particular and declare, "To Athens, may it argue itself into ruin as long as it argues in my tavern." The chicken clucks in agreement. You drink, laugh bitterly, and let the night close in. Sunday, the quiet day, almost. The final day of the week dawns with something so rare you almost don't recognize it. Silence. No shouting outside. No goats raiding the barley. No children chasing chickens across your floor. The city itself seems weary after 6 days of noise and excess. Even the cicadas are quiet, as if Athens has collectively agreed to nap. You stretch, sweep half-heartedly, and actually manage to hear your own broom scraping the sticky floor. The tavern looks almost respectable in the early light, its broken benches hiding their shame in the shadows. You light a small lamp, set out a single amphora, and for the first time all week think, perhaps today will be peaceful. The first customer arrives slowly, like an afterthought. An old man with a stooped back and a cloak, patched more times than you've mopped the floor. He asks for 1 cup, places a single coin on the counter, and sits in silence. You pour him the weakest wine you can manage, but he doesn't notice. He stares into the cup, as if seeing memories at the bottom. After a long pause, he begins to talk. Stories of battles long past, of comrades now dust, of loves lost before your tavern was even built. His voice is cracked but steady. You polish cups and listen, not because you care, but because listening costs nothing and keeps the old man from dying in silence. By mid-morning, a few others wander in, a woman carrying a basket of herbs, selling sprigs to anyone with coins. She orders a sip of wine, pays in time, and leaves the cup smelling fresher than your whole tavern. A pair of fishermen follow, bringing the stink of the sea. They argue quietly about whether they caught enough to feed their families. They drink slowly, grateful for a roof and a bench, even if the bench creaks with every shift. For a while, the tavern feels almost holy. The air is calm, the voice is soft, the coins trickle in steadily. You lean against the counter, arms folded, and allow yourself the dangerous luxury of hope. But peace is fragile, and Athens does not allow it for long. By midday, a pack of children bursts in, 8, maybe 10 of them, laughing, shouting, chasing one another as if your tavern were a playground. They leap onto benches, pound tables, knock cups to the floor. You shout, wave your broom, curse like Ares himself, but they scatter and regroup, impossible to catch. One child hides under a table, another climbs onto your counter. Your wife storms in, grabs 2 by the ears, and drags them out, but the rest escape into the street, still shrieking. You sigh, mop the spilled wine, and wonder why Dionysus hates you so personally. The afternoon passes in waves of quiet and chaos. A young man stumbles in, eyes wide with love, declaring he must drink to gather courage before speaking to the woman he adores. You sell him a cup, watch him gulp it, then a second, then a third. He declares himself brave, marches out, and promptly vomits in the street. You shake your head, muttering, "May Aphrodite have mercy on him." Later, a self-proclaimed prophet appears, claiming the gods sent him to your tavern. He demands free wine, promising divine blessings in return. You laugh in his face and charge him double. He pays, drinks, and promptly falls asleep on the floor, snoring like thunder. You drape a rag over his head and step around him. By evening, the tavern holds a handful of quiet souls. The old man still nurses his first cup, eyes distant. The fishermen play dice with pebbles. The herb seller has returned, humming softly as she knots bundles. The air smells faintly of time instead of sweat, and for once, you almost believe in peace. The sun sets slowly, painting the walls in gold. You collect the few coins earned, light a final lamp, and glance around your battered kingdom. The floor is still sticky, the benches still broken, the amphorae still half empty. Yet, in the soft glow of evening, the tavern feels less like a prison and more like home. Your wife sits beside you, for once not scolding, just tired. The children are quiet, exhausted from chasing chickens all day. Even the chicken itself roosts peacefully, wings folded. You raise a cup, thin wine, but wine nonetheless, and declare softly, "The week is done. We survived." Your wife clinks her cup against yours. Outside, Athens hums with the faint sounds of lullabies and closing doors. The tavern breathes out one last sigh, settling into silence. Tomorrow, the chaos begins again, but tonight, at least, you rest. The Tavern Keeper's Week. So ends the Tavern Keeper's long march through 7 days of wine, sweat, and survival. From the philosophers who pay with words instead of coins, to the soldiers who spill more amphorae than they drink, to weddings that collapse into chaos and politics that collapse into fists, you have endured them all. Your benches are cracked, your floor is sticky, your amphorae are lighter than your purse, and your head is heavier than stone. Yet somehow, you are still here. You have shouted, mopped, poured, cursed, and counted. You have dreamed of peace and laughed at the absurdity of it. Perhaps tomorrow will bring another festival, another disaster, another round of customers who demand everything and pay almost nothing. Perhaps goats will raid again, or children will claim the tavern as their playground. Perhaps philosophers will argue until dawn about whether your wine is truly wine. But for now, the lamps are dim, the cups are empty, and Athens sleeps. You sit behind the counter, rag in one hand, coin pouch in the other, and whisper to yourself the only prayer a tavern keeper can truly believe: "Let me survive another week." And with that, the door creaks shut, the smoke settles, and silence, fragile, temporary, miraculous, wraps the tavern at last. Chariots, cracks, and customers. Prelude. Congratulations. You are not a philosopher, nor a general, not even a humble potter. Instead, you find yourself in the most peculiar of trades, a dealer of used chariots in ancient Athens. Your yard does not shine with bronze or marble, but rather slumbers in the dust, filled with wooden frames that wobble, wheels that creak, and leather straps that still smell faintly of horses with questionable tempers. The sun is barely awake, just beginning to pour its gold over the tiled rooftops of Athens. When you unlock the gate to your chariot yard, the hinges complain louder than any customer you've ever had, and that is saying something. A cloud of dust greets you like an old, loyal dog. You cough once, pat your chest, and declare to no one in particular, "Another day, another miracle to sell." The sign is still hanging. It says proudly, "Honest Kostas Preowned Luxury Chariots." Before any customer dares to wander in, you make a ritual of walking among the rows of chariots. Each one greets you with its own special ailment. One wheel leans so far outward, it looks like it wants to escape. Another frame groans as if haunted by the ghosts of every ox that ever dragged it. A third sits with such dignified stillness that you almost admire it, until you remember the front axle has been replaced with a log stolen from a carpenter's scrap heap. You kneel beside a wagon and begin tightening straps, or at least pretending to. The leather resists your pull, stiff with age and a smell somewhere between goat's breath and old wine. "Perfect," you murmur, convincing yourself more than the leather. "Seasoned, reliable, practically divine." You give the wheel a ceremonial kick. It wobbles. You nod as if it has just demonstrated the balance of the spheres. The first potential buyer of the day arrives just as you're brushing sawdust from your tunic. A farmer, shoulders hunched from years bent over rocky soil, stands at the gate. His donkey chews lazily at a rope, clearly unimpressed by your establishment. The man scans your collection with the same enthusiasm he might show toward moldy barley. You stride toward him, hands wide, smile radiant. "Good morning, noble tiller of earth. Welcome to the finest collection of roadworthy chariots this side of the Acropolis. May I interest you in a sturdy model, built to endure rough fields, uneven stones, and the occasional invading Spartan." The farmer narrows his eyes. He points at a squat, lopsided cart whose wheel rims have been chewed thin by time. "That one looks cheap." "Cheap?" you exclaim, as though the word offends Apollo himself. "My good man, that cart is economical, yes, but also historic. It once carried olives to the agora in the days when Pericles was still arguing about democracy. You can't buy history like this anywhere else." The farmer taps the rim with his stick. A splinter breaks off and lands in the dust. You sweep it aside with your sandal, all the while nodding gravely. See? Self-pruning. This cart maintains itself. He grunts, mutters something about borrowing his neighbor's wheelbarrow instead, and trudges off with his donkey. You watch him go, keeping your smile fixed until he disappears. Then you sigh, slap the side of the cart, and whisper, "It's not you, it's him." Back at the gate, you straighten your posture, tug your tunic smooth, and prepare for the next round. Athens is full of dreamers, and surely one of them will see not a pile of creaky timber, but a ticket to glory. The sun climbs higher, turning your dusty yard into a shimmering oven. You dab your forehead with a rag that once served as a saddlecloth and tell yourself, heat sells faster than charm. Surely someone will stumble in, desperate for shade, and you'll just happen to have a chariot to sweeten the deal. And, as if the gods enjoy a private joke, your next customer appears, a soldier on leave. His bronze cuirass is battered, his nose bent at an angle that suggests he's argued with too many fists. He circles your lot with the swagger of a man who thinks everything is a potential weapon, including you. He stops at a squat racing chariot, the kind that once thrilled crowds, but now thrills only termites. "How fast?" he asks. You clap your hands together, faster than rumor in the agora. This very chariot nearly broke records in the Panathenaic Games, though to be fair, it also nearly broke the driver. But speed, sir, pure speed, step in, and you'll feel the wind tearing at your helmet before you even leave the yard. The soldier climbs up, the frame groans like a dying philosopher. He bounces once, and both wheels squeak in protest. He smirks. It feels like the gods spit on it. You bow theatrically. Indeed, consecrated by divine saliva, a rare blessing, and at no extra charge. He laughs, a harsh sound, then mutters something about preferring his own boots. As he leaves, you shout after him, "Don't come crawling back when you're outrun by goats." Not long after, a young couple appears, hand in hand, eyes full of the sort of love that makes you instantly suspicious. They pause at a broad wagon, its sides reinforced with planks of varying color. The man whispers, "For our dowry, perhaps." The woman nods eagerly. You sweep in, voice syrupy. Ah, a wedding chariot, strong enough to carry garlands, amphorae, even a mother-in-law or two. Each plank tells a story, oak from Arcadia, pine from Piraeus, and that reddish one from a tavern wall. Built to last, built for love. The bride-to-be steps closer, then presses on the wheel rim. It creaks and shifts outward. Her eyes widen. It's loose. You grin, refusing panic. Flexible, my lady. It adjusts naturally to the weight of affection. The more love you place in it, the sturdier it becomes. The groom frowns, whispers something about hiring mules instead, and drags her off before you can demonstrate the adjustable axle. You watch them go, then mutter, "May the mules be less romantic." By now, the heat is thick, and even the cicadas sound like they're complaining. You crouch beside another cart, fiddling with its reins. The leather splits in your hand, snapping like dried figs. You tie the ends together with a knot so complicated even Hermes couldn't untangle it. Perfect, you sigh. Now it's custom made. Your final midday visitor is an older man in a spotless toga, clearly someone who believes his sandals should never touch dust. He looks at your collection with the air of a magistrate surveying criminals. Finally, he points with disdain at a ceremonial chariot adorned with faded paint and missing jewels. This looks presentable, but does it smell presentable? You inhale deeply, suppressing a cough. The scent is equal parts mildew, horse sweat, and whatever died in the upholstery. Ah, you say, that is the fragrance of tradition, the aroma of glory. Senators once rode in this very chariot. When people smell it, they think respect, authority, power. It is practically incense. He sniffs. His face puckers like an unripe olive. He waves his hand, mutters about sacrilege, and departs. Alone again, you sit on the wheel of the least broken cart and let your legs dangle. The dust sticks to your tunic. The sun pounds at your head, and you whisper, "Customers are like wheels. Round and round they go, but they never quite fit the axle." Still, the day is not over. Evening always brings a last chance, and you are, if nothing else, stubborn enough to believe that someone, anyone, will buy a dream on wheels. The heat finally loosens its grip as shadows stretch across your lot. You fan yourself with a cracked lid from an old amphora and decide it is time for maintenance. In practice, this means poking at axles with a stick, brushing dust from the leather as if polishing bronze, and occasionally whispering encouragement to the wheels. "Don't let them see you limp," you mutter, tying a rope around a wobbling hub. "Stand tall. Today could still be the day." Just then, a boy appears at the gate, no more than 12, barefoot and wide-eyed. He stares at a narrow cart, missing half its paint. "Mister, how much for that one?" he asks. You lean on the shaft, surprised. "That," you say slowly, "that is a champion's cart, boy. Small, yes, but fast, like Hermes in sandals too tight." The boy digs in his pouch, producing 3 coins so battered you can barely tell their value. He lays them in his palm, hopeful. Your heart softens. You crouch, pat his shoulder. "That cart is too much for you, but..." You glance around the lot, then hand him a wooden wheel peg. "Here, the soul of the cart. Keep it, and one day, when you're grown, you'll find a full chariot to match it." The boy beams, thanks you, and runs off into the streets, holding the peg like a relic. You watch him vanish, smiling despite yourself. Not long after, your luck shifts. A woman in her 30s, sturdy as a market stall, strides in with confidence. She points at a medium-sized cart whose boards are patched with mismatched nails. "I need something to carry amphorae from the port." Nothing fancy, just something that won't collapse under wine jars. Your chest swells. Finally, a practical customer. "Ah, you've found it. This cart has hauled olives, grain, even the occasional goat. It creaks, yes, but that is the wood singing. Every note says, dependable." She steps closer, knocks on the side. The cart groans, but holds. She nods slowly. "How much?" You stammer out a price lower than you intended, fearing she might change her mind. She shrugs, counts out the coins, and before you can protest, you are helping her hitch the cart to a mule waiting outside. As the wheels turn, they squeal like sleepy geese, but they turn. She waves, already planning her cargo, and disappears down the road. For a moment, silence settles. You stand at the gate, jingling coins in your palm, feeling like Apollo himself just bought you a drink. One sale. It is enough to call the day victorious. Evening drapes itself over Athens. The Acropolis glows against the fading sky, and cicadas hum their endless chorus. You close the yard, leaning on the gate, watching the dust rise and settle among your collection. The chariots stand in crooked rows, imperfect, patched, ridiculous, yet they are yours. You exhale slowly. Another day survived. Tomorrow, perhaps another miracle. And with that, the sounds of the city soften, the light dims, and your weary heart drifts into the calm embrace of night. Morning arrives with the promise of trouble, as it always does in your yard. You shuffle through the gate, rubbing your eyes, and discover a stranger already waiting. He is bearded, broad-shouldered, and impatient. The kind of man who looks like he has wrestled both goats and nephews into submission. His arms are crossed, his sandal taps the dust. "I need that cart," he declares, stabbing a finger at one of the sturdier wagons, or at least the one that hasn't collapsed yet. "Take it to my cousin near the Dippolon gate before nightfall. He's paying, not me." You bow, because bowing is cheaper than honesty. "Of course, citizen. A most reliable cart, a treasure of craftsmanship. I will deliver it safely and swiftly." Inside, your stomach lurches. The Dippolon gate is far, half the city away, through streets that twist like gossip and rattle with every stone. Still, a sale is a sale. You begin preparing the wagon, a ritual, equal parts repair and prayer. First, you brush dust from the sides with a rag that once served as your pillow. Then you tighten the ropes on the frame, though they tighten about, as well as wine-soaked sandals. When the left wheel growls, you pat it fondly, whispering, "Not today. Today you behave. Save the complaints for tomorrow." The straps dangle like tired snakes. You knot them together, muttering about divine design. One strap snaps in your hand. You tie the ends into a lump that looks less like a knot and more like a dead pigeon, but it holds, for now. You nod solemnly, convincing yourself as much as the cart. Perfect artisan craftsmanship. Next comes the donkey. You do not own one, of course. Your neighbor does, and he lent it reluctantly after you promised figs or wine, or perhaps both. You forget. The animal eyes you with deep suspicion, ears twitching, as though it already regrets the arrangement. You adjust the harness, which hangs crooked, and tug the reins. "Forward," you announce. The donkey does not move. You tug harder. The donkey sighs, a sound so human it wounds your pride. You push from behind, boots slipping in the dust. The cart lurches half a step. The wheel groans. The donkey farts. You pretend not to notice. Excellent progress. By now, a small audience has gathered. A pair of children, a fig seller, and an old woman carrying a basket of onions. They watch your struggle with the solemnity of priests at a ritual. When the cart finally jolts into motion, the children clap, the fig seller chuckles, and the old woman shakes her head as if foretelling doom. You stride forward as though the performance was intentional. The donkey trudges reluctantly. The cart creaks like an old hymn, and you raise your chin. Onward, noble steed. Onward to Dippolon Gate, to glory, to destiny. The donkey trips on a stone. The wheel jerks sideways, and a plank rattles loose. You catch it just in time, wedge it back into place, and keep walking. Behind you, the children laugh. Ahead of you lies the entire city, a labyrinth of noise, dust, and cobblestones, sharper than Spartan insults. Still, you march, one step, one wheel turn, one whispered prayer at a time. The streets of Athens do not welcome you. They ambush you. From the moment you steer your borrowed donkey and rattling cart beyond the first corner, the city seems determined to prove that no man in his right mind should ever attempt delivery work. Children dart across the road like arrows loosed without aim. They laugh and shout, one even daring to slap the donkey's flank before vanishing into an alley. The donkey snorts, offended, and refuses to move until you bribe it with half a fig from your pocket. Don't say I never treat you. you mutter, chewing the other half yourself. Vendors call from every side. Fresh olives, 2 for the price of 3. Fish straight from Piraeus yesterday. Their stalls spill into the street, amphorae and baskets narrowing the path. You try to weave the cart carefully, but the left wheel insists on pulling sideways, nudging a pyramid of onions. The onions scatter, the vendor curses, and you bow deeply, promising he'll sell more now that the street is seasoned. Not far along, you encounter a group of philosophers, robes draped, brows furrowed. They are too absorbed in debating whether motion is real to notice that your cart is very much in motion. You shout politely. They ignore you. You shout less politely. Still nothing. Finally, you push the donkey forward, easing past while one wheel rides over a sandal. The philosopher yelps, but his colleagues argue whether pain exists or is merely perception. You don't stay to clarify. The road grows steeper, stones jutting like broken teeth. The cart jolts with each bump, creaks blending into a chorus of misery. Then, with a crack, sharp as Zeus's thunder, the right wheel leaps free. The cart drops onto its corner, tilting like a drunk sailor. The donkey brays, the bystanders laugh, and you crouch beside the wreckage as if performing surgery. Stay calm, you whisper, though it is unclear whether you mean the wheel, the cart, or yourself. You wedge a rock beneath the axle, wrestle the wheel back into place, and tie it on with rope so frayed it resembles a philosopher's beard. Sweat runs into your eyes, but at last the wheel holds. Crooked, yes, but spinning. Ha, you cry. Improvised engineering. The gods themselves would applaud. The donkey does not applaud. It stares at you, unimpressed, then resumes walking. As you near the agora, the noise swells. Trumpeters practice for a festival, their notes clashing like drunken cicadas. A woman selling pottery yells that your cart is a danger to civilization. A pack of stray dogs trots behind you, sniffing the air as if waiting for the cart to collapse into chewable pieces. You push on, lips moving in silent bargains with every deity you can remember. Hermes, guide the wheels. Athena, grant wisdom. Dionysus, at least make me too drunk to notice. When the Dippolon gate finally comes into sight, distant but unmistakable, relief floods you. You straighten your back, wipe your brow, and whisper, halfway alive, half a miracle. The merchant becomes a showman. The third day begins with a restlessness that no amount of sweeping in the yard can cure. You pace between your rows of battered chariots, muttering aloud like a philosopher rehearsing an argument. If customers will not come to me, then I must go to them. A salesman who waits is a fool. A salesman who marches into the agora, he is a visionary. The carts, as usual, offer no encouragement. One wheel groans, another wobbles in place. Even the donkey in the neighbor's pen stares at you with the patience of someone who knows you are about to ruin its morning. Still, you are determined. You select a cart with the least visible cracks, though least visible only means the damage is cleverly hidden beneath grime. With exaggerated care, you wipe dust from its frame using a rag stiff with old sweat. The wood reveals itself in streaks, not beautiful, but at least distinguishable from mud. Then, in a moment of inspiration, you fetch a tiny amphora of olive oil, splash it over the side, and rub until the cart gleams with a greasy shine. Better already, you declare. Why, you could pass for a ceremonial wagon, provided the ceremony is attended only by drunks. To complete the transformation, you tie a faded ribbon, left over from some festival no one remembers, around the shaft. It flutters weakly in the morning breeze, like a gladiator waving a surrender flag. But in your imagination, it is triumph. The donkey arrives reluctantly, bribed with figs and empty promises. Harnessing the beast is a battle of wills, with much braying and more muttering. Eventually, the straps are fastened, though at odd angles, and you climb into the driver's spot. "Forward," you command. The donkey ignores you. "Please?" At last, with the authority of a bored god, it shuffles into motion. The ride to the agora is not glorious. The cart rattles with each stone, announcing your progress like a drumline at a funeral. The ribbon tangles around your ankle. A group of children trail behind, giggling at every squeak. Still, you keep your chin high. "Today we advertise," you whisper. "Today we conquer." When you finally roll into the crowded marketplace, Athens greets you in full chorus, vendors shouting, gulls screaming, hammers clanging from a nearby smithy. The air smells of olives, smoke, and ambition. You steer your sorry parade into the central square, stopping with a dramatic flourish that nearly throws you off the bench. The crowd notices. How could they not? Children point. Philosophers raise their brows. A line of fishmongers pause mid-haggle. Even a few soldiers lean on their spears, grinning in expectation of entertainment. You clear your throat and spread your arms wide. Good citizens of Athens, why drag your weary feet through dust when you could glide like Apollo himself? Behold, transportation perfected, a cart that defies age, a chariot that laughs at cracks, a vehicle so reliable it survived my yard. Laughter ripples through the crowd. Encouraged, you climb atop the cart. The boards sag alarmingly, squealing like panicked mice. "Ignore that," you cry. "It is merely applause from the timber." You bounce once for effect, nearly punching a new hole in the floor. A man selling olives cups his hands and shouts, "Does it come with a coffin?" The crowd erupts. You bow deeply. Yes, and at no additional cost. The donkey chooses this moment to unleash a noise so spectacular it silences even the gulls. The crowd howls with laughter. You spread your arms. Behold, even the noble beast approves. Truly, this is not a cart. It is a festival on wheels. Coins do not shower into your lap yet, but the crowd lingers, curious, amused, whispering to one another. And in a city where attention is as valuable as silver, you feel, for the first time this week, like a performer who might just succeed. The sun climbs toward its merciless zenith, baking the stones of the agora until they shimmer like molten bronze. Your cart sits in the middle of the square, wobbling proudly on its uneven wheels, while the donkey munches serenely on a fig skin that someone tossed nearby. You, however, stand tall upon the creaking frame, a self-proclaimed herald of commerce. "Citizens of Athens," you shout once more, sweeping your arms like an orator before the assembly. You argue about politics, you debate philosophy, you pray to the gods, but how do you travel to these pursuits? On foot, sweating and stumbling. Enough. Ride instead on the chariot of destiny. A group of fishmongers howl with laughter. One tosses a sardine that smacks the cart and slides down the greasy olive-oiled side. "There!" you exclaim, pointing dramatically. Even the fish long to be carried by this glorious wagon. The crowd roars. Now people are pressing closer, women with baskets, children clinging to their tunics, even a stooped priest with eyebrows like storm clouds. You decide it is time for a demonstration. With a flourish, you leap down and tug the reins. The donkey, unimpressed, chews. You tug harder. The cart groans, lurches forward a few feet, then halts with a squeal that echoes off the marble columns. The priest raises a hand. "That noise," he intones gravely, "is surely a curse." You bow deeply. Indeed, holy sir, it is cursed with strength. The wheels groan because they are eager for the road. They beg to carry burdens as Atlas carries the sky. A child pipes up. Will it break? Break? You puff your chest. Never. Why, I sat upon it myself, and did it collapse? No, it carried me like a king. Even now it stands strong, despite the donkey's digestive protest earlier. Laughter again ripples through the crowd. At last, a potential buyer steps forward, a burly baker, flour still dusting his arms. How much? He asks bluntly. The crowd hushes. Oh, measure him quickly. His arms could break you in half. His sandals are cracked, but his pouch jingles. You name a price just low enough to tempt, just high enough to impress. He circles the cart, prodding the wood, sniffing suspiciously. The donkey sneezes in his face. The crowd bursts into applause. The baker wipes his brow, scowls, and finally shakes his head. Too risky. My bread is fragile. This cart is not. He stalks off, leaving you with the echo of laughter and the taste of failure. Still, you do not falter. You climb back onto the cart, spread your arms once more, and declare, "Citizens, the baker is blind to greatness, but you wise Athenians, you know value when you see it. Step forward, seize destiny, and let this cart carry you to glory." Coins do not rain down, but one or two curious souls linger, and in the agora, lingering is the seed of commerce. The sun begins its slow descent, but the agora is still a cauldron of noise. The air smells of fried fish, dust, and ambition. Your throat is raw from shouting praises about your chariot. Your arms ache from gesturing like an overpaid tragedian, and your donkey has taken to lying down mid-performance as though auditioning for the role of corpse. Still, the crowd lingers, not large now, but steady. A few curious merchants, some children, a weary traveler leaning on his staff. You sense one more chance to make the day worthwhile. You clear your throat, slap the side of the cart, and announce, "Ladies and gentlemen, and you too, noble donkey enthusiasts, this cart is not merely wood and rope. It is a story, a tradition, a companion on the road of life. Why, once it even survived the sacred way during festival season, a route so crowded a snail could overtake a chariot, yet this brave wagon endured." The children giggle. One dares to climb up and bounce on the plank seat. The cart groans but holds. "See," you cry. "Youth tested, cart approved." An older woman steps closer, balancing a basket of herbs. "Could it carry this?" she asks, nodding to her load. "With grace," you reply instantly. In fact, the aroma of your herbs would perfume the wood. Together, you and this cart would be a traveling garden, admired by all Athens. She smiles faintly, then shakes her head. "Too big. I'll stick with my donkey." The crowd laughs kindly, not cruelly, and she wanders off. At last, a gaunt traveler steps forward. His cloak is patched, his sandals worn, his eyes wary. He touches the side of the cart, runs his hand over the olive-oiled wood. "How much for just one journey? To the outskirts? Tonight?" Your heart leaps. A rental, you can spin that into profit. You name a modest fee. He hesitates, then places a few coins in your hand. The deal is struck. Together, you hitch the donkey, load his bundle of belongings, and send him rattling off into the sunset, the wheels squealing like festival pipes. The crowd cheers, as though you've won an Olympic crown. Exhausted but glowing with triumph, you bow deeply. Citizens of Athens, remember this day. You witnessed history, the revival of the humble cart, the salvation of honest travel. The crowd disperses, still chuckling. The agora returns to its normal clamor. You sit on the edge of your cart, counting the coins again and again, as though repetition will make them multiply. The donkey nudges your shoulder, demanding figs you do not have. You pat its head. Tomorrow, perhaps. Today, you've earned only my gratitude. When the shadows stretch long and the gulls wheel overhead, you trundle back toward your yard. The city quiets, lanterns flicker to life, and cicadas sing their evening hymn. By the time you close the gate, the sky is bruised with twilight. You lean against a wheel, weary yet strangely proud. No grand fortune, no golden chariots, but attention, laughter, and one paid journey. For a used cart merchant, that counts as glory. And so, 3 days pass in the life of Athens' most suspicious profession, the humble dealer of used chariots. You have endured suspicious farmers, laughing crowds, stubborn donkeys, and wheels that seem held together by divine sarcasm. You have marched through dust, stumbled through chaos, and somehow managed to return each evening with coins in your pouch, proof that persistence is a miracle in itself. Perhaps tomorrow will bring another customer, another disaster, another unlikely triumph, or perhaps tomorrow will simply bring silence, the creak of empty wheels under the stars. Either way, you will face it as you always do, with a smile too wide to be trusted and a story too grand to be true.